Hey everyone. The other day I was linked this video by Pushing Misumi, which showcases a glitch in Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask where, by pausing and unpausing repeatedly while your sword is swinging, you can manipulate the sword's collider, its hitbox, in other words, and if you pause and unpause enough, in this clip 59 times, the collider will grow to comical proportions. I'll play the relevant clip, but I'll also post the full video in the description so you can follow along.
If we unpause after 59, it looks like this here. Look at this massive hitbox.
So yeah, it gets pretty big. I was linked this by Danny B's Twitter thread on the subject. He has a couple other applications, like hitting Volvagia while she's underground in Ocarina of Time. And all these are pretty cool, but it doesn't look like anyone has really investigated why the glitch occurs. Like, why does the sword hitbox change when you pause and unpause? Why do you need to pause 60 times to make it really big? So I took a look in the Majora's Mask decompilation codebase, and I think I have an understanding of what's going wrong here. So this is going to get pretty technical, but hopefully I can explain what is going wrong here, and hopefully you walk away with a good understanding of what's going on. So to start with, let's sort of take a step back and make a distinction between drawing and updating. In the Zelda 64 engine, and other engines too, there's a distinction that's made between drawing actors and updating them. Updating is everything that's involved with sort of advancing the game to the next state. So you update the positions of the actors, you update their current state, etc., etc. Whereas drawing is just what it says on the tin. You just draw the actors to the screen. So the thing is, when you pause and unpause, you can actually cause the game to draw multiple times without ever updating once. And let me showcase that with an emulator. Let me resume this and side hop. So right now Link is in the middle of the air. Right there. See, I just paused and unpaused a couple different times, and Link didn't move at all. So in this case, I actually caused the game to call the draw function multiple times, but it has not yet called update. So if the developers accidentally or mistakenly put code in the draw function that updates the game state, then by pausing and unpausing, I can infinitely call that code and cause havoc. And that's exactly what happens with Sword Extension. So let me switch back to the code really quick. Right now we're looking at player draw gameplay. Note that the player code is a beast. It's really complicated and there's lots of unnamed or undocumented things in it. You'll just have to roll with it, but luckily this one is pretty straightforward. It just draws the player during normal gameplay. Pay attention to this function right here, player post limb draw gameplay. This is the function that is used like a callback, and every time a limb of the player is drawn, it will call this. That's why it's post limb, after the limb is drawn. So you can even see it's like checking the limb that was last drawn. This is a huge function, so we don't need to care about most of it. We really only care about this block right here. This if is pretty gigantic, but what it's really trying to check is checking if you're swinging your weapon, like swinging a sword or something. And we are, so we go into this function right here, and this function right here is the one that's the cause of the weapon extension, sword extension glitch. Remember, this is called every time you pause and unpause while you're swinging your sword. So what does this function do and why is it wrong? Let's take a look at this one first, this second function right here. Again, this is also pretty big and complex. You don't need to care about this too much. What matters is that this is given a list of weapon tips and a list of weapon bases. And it's a list because in Majora's Mask at least, there's multiple different hitboxes when you swing your sword. So there's multiple different tips and bases of the weapon. And this will right here, this takes the calculated tip and the calculated base, and it will update the collider quad. If I hover over this, you can see collider quad, melee weapon quads. This will update the collider quad for the weapon. That's its hitbox. So we hop back in the emulator really quick. I can show that off a little better. If I, oops, a little early. Right there. So you can see on screen, I'll show the code again. There's the 4 points of the quad and the 3 XYZ coordinates for each point on the quad. And what this is doing is every frame that the player is drawn while they're swinging their sword, it's going to go in here and it's going to update these coordinates. So that can kind of explain why, if I am pausing the game, I can cause these coordinates to start changing. So if I am pausing like that, you can actually see as I'm pausing, like, the game state is not updating, but the coordinates are still updating. in the background. It's a little hard to see over the pause menu overlay, but you are seeing those, right? So that's why pausing and unpausing is having that effect, is because it's all part of this code right here that is called as part of the draw function. And by pausing and unpausing, I'm still calling this function over and over again. Now, that explains why pausing and unpausing has an effect, but you should still hopefully have a couple questions. Like, for example, why did I need to triple slash there? Why doesn't it work with every slash? And why, when you pause roughly 60 or so times, does it start to go crazy? Now, to answer those questions, we need to go back to the original function that we were looking at, and then look at this one, 80126AB4. Now, we can just ignore this block entirely. This is checking if you're a Goron or if you're Kafe, and we are neither, so we can skip that. But what really matters is we have this list right here, this list of tips right here. And what we do with it is we manipulate them a little bit, and then we set them to be the weapon tips that we're going to use later in the function that sets the collider quad's coordinates. Now, this is the relevant block of code right here. This thing that looks at player's unknown ADD. What is player unknown ADD? Well, the comment suggests it's some sort of combo counter, and that's basically what it is. If I hop back over to the emulator really quick, you can actually see it. Oops, that's my Ocarina. At the bottom of the text, you can see the unknown ADD. And when I do 1 slash, it's just 1. When I do 2 slashes, it's 2. But when I do 3, it actually increases a lot. Like, it keeps counting up for the duration of the swing. So if we go back to the code, we can actually kind of see why that happens. Because if it's greater than or equal to 3, it will increment it by 1. That's what this plus plus does. And then it will adjust one of the weapon tips based on the value of this combo counter. I'm just going to call it a combo counter to keep things simple. Now, the reason why this is a problem is, like the other code, this code will run every time you pause the game while you're swinging your sword. So if your combo counter is greater or equal to 3 and you swing your sword and you're pausing the game with perfect timing, you can just increment this as much as you want. Let me show you. So if I do a triple slash where it's going to be greater than or equal to 3, and I pause, check that unknown ADD value. It keeps going up. 21, 23, 25, 27, 29, and so on, right? Like, it just keeps going up. And every time I pause and unpause, it goes up by 2. Now, the reason why it goes up by 2, I'm not really sure why, but I believe it's because every time you pause and unpause, the player is drawn twice, whereas I think in Ocarina of Time it's only done once, but that's not super important. The point is that as long as I pause and unpause with good timing, I can make this combo counter go up as high as I want. Now, that can present a problem, because if we look at this combo counter, that's a signed 8-bit integer. Now, a signed 8-bit integer, for those of you who are not like computer experts, means that this is an integer that can hold a value between negative 128 and 127. That's not a very wide range of values. And that means that if I pause and unpause, well, roughly 60 times 2 is 120, so give or take a little bit, that means that we can actually overflow this combo counter. And I have a save state that showcases this. Let me switch over to the emulator really quick and load the save states. So right now in this, I have, this is a pause. I'm not going to sit here and try to pause correctly 60 times. You can see my combo counter is at 126, and this quad1.z is at like negative 501. Let me reload the save state really quick, and then do a pause buffer. So now you can see that the combo counter actually overflowed to negative 128, and this quad1.z went all the way to negative 1,500 units. That is over, or like, I think it's a little over 1,000 units, or negative 1,000 units, more than it was before. And that makes sense when we look at the code, because this is using player unknown ADD as like a multiplier for this, and we just made it negative. So 9 minus a large negative number is a large positive number, and thus we had a big impact on this. Now, if I go back to the emulator and I just pause and unpause repeatedly in this case, it's actually not going to change very much, because the once you reach negative 128, it's gonna like stay there. You can see it's not like changing as I pause and unpause, well, except when I mess up. So what's going on is, if I go back to the code, you can even see it. It's Since this is looking at player unknown ADD, negative 128 is not greater than equal to 3. So this just doesn't get called, and it just stays like this forever. So yeah, that is the reason why this bug occurs. It's a combination of two different factors, one of which is that by pausing and unpausing in the middle of certain types of attacks, like say a triple slash or the end of a jump slash, really anything that makes this combo counter go to 3 or higher, we can infinitely increment this combo counter and really cause some havoc. And that will adjust the weapon tip. By doing that, by incrementing combo counter, we adjust this weapon tip such that when in this function, when we update the collider's position, it really goes haywire and can grow to really big sizes. So yeah, that's it for me. Thanks for watching.